Welcome, Steeler faithful and NFL fans, to another episode of Steelers Latest with your host, Jay Reels. Jason Nazario is my government name. As we chronicle what has gone on throughout training camp, now preseason, leading up to week one of the NFL season, which is now less than 3 weeks away. I'm going to take a bit of a different tact here because if you've watched the previous episodes over the last 3 weeks, and I pretty much broke down every unit, both offense, defense, even special teams. That's right. I had to unpack something. What am I going to talk about on a day in, day out basis? Well, now it's going to pivot because where I'm not going to talk about the quarterback, so I'm not going to talk about the defensive linemen or the wide receivers, the secondary, etc. You can definitely check that back in the archives. And if you haven't, please do so and hit subscribe while you're at it. If you're, like I said, a big NFL fan or a Steeler nut job like yours truly. But this tact is going to be a little bit different here as we lead up to the final preseason game, which is Thursday, where the Steelers will go to Buffalo in that new palace there up in Western New York. But with the opening day or season opening weekend, whatever you want to call it, to me, opening day is always Sunday. It's not the Wednesday night. It's not Thursday. And I get it over the years. The Super Bowl winner gets that first game, so on and so forth. But as we all know, that to me, Sunday, 1 o'clock, is the NFL. No matter how you slice it, dice it, and I don't care if you're my age, which is 57, or if you're 27. The NFL is designed to be Sunday at 1 o'clock, and I understand 4 o'clock, the night game, whatever. But now, to hop right to it, early thoughts prior to week one here when it comes to the team and how everything is starting to come into shape. Now, we're not going to know until Sunday who's going to make the team, who's going to be cut, who's going to be the survivor, or survivors in this case, if you want to use the plural. And we're not going to have to hold our breaths that much longer. We still got 5 more days. But when we get to next week, I'll certainly unpack all that. And it's very early to even indicate. We could guess and certainly break down as much as we possibly can. I would think that the Steelers are going to keep 4 quarterbacks on the team. I don't think they're going to cut Will Howard or Drew Aller or maybe even dangle Mason Rudolph for another team if a quarterback gets injured, if they want to use Rudolph as security. Remember that one year he went to Tennessee before coming back to Pittsburgh? Who knows? I mean, anything can happen, as we know. But I'm not going to sit here right now to break down the roster. I'm not going to sit here to be like, oh, who's going to stay, who's going to go? Who knows? Maybe by Friday, if I got nothing else to talk about, that could be the case. But the early thoughts going into this final preseason game, as well as week one, is that everybody remains healthy, as we know. We don't know the status of DK Metcalf, of Michael Pittman, of Joey Porter. Those are the 3 guys in particular that everybody's going to zero in and focus as a Steeler fan to see whether or not those guys are going to be primed and ready to go when the Falcons visit Acrisure Stadium there on September 13th. And how I see it is that if they are healthy and ready to go, which I think they will be, I mean, I would expect them to go all out. And it's probably going to be a hot day. They're going to wear the black jerseys, which I love. I know a lot of teams early on, especially with summer starting to get to a close, but you still have a lot of warm weather throughout the country. And whether that's maybe in Philadelphia where they're going to wear the green, or the Jets are going to wear their home whites, or other teams that usually wear the dark colors in their building decide to forego that to get some sort of advantage to have the opposing team wear the dark jerseys, where Steelers are like, no, this is our home uniform, the Steeler black. We're not going to wear the whites in our own building. So even if it happens to be 85 degrees and on the field it's in the 90s, there come opening day, the Falcons are going to wear the whites and the Steelers are going to wear the black, which I love because I like tradition. I like that teams are going to stick to it no matter what the weather conditions are. And I get it, that's a little bit off the beaten path. It's like, come on, Jay Reels, can you talk about something more important than that? Well, hey, listen, that's a factor, right? When you watch the highlights of all the other games and you say, wait a minute, the Jets usually wear green at home. Why are they wearing white? Oh, wait a second. Such and such team is. So anyway, I digress. But with all that being said, the only thoughts I can really espouse here between now and week one, the health of the team. Obviously, the quarterback is going to be enormous, as I'm sure we'll probably talk about that again as we head toward week one. And we mentioned the offensive line. If you haven't watched those previous episodes, please go back in the archives and check those out, as I mentioned earlier. But really, the early thoughts of week one is that we just wanted to get here. It's still another, count 'em. What is it? 19 days before we even get to the first game of the season. And I'm not talking about the Seattle-New England game there, which will be actually 2 weeks from today, or the Niner-Ram game down in Australia. I'm not counting that. I'm talking about 1 o'clock where the Steelers will host the Falcons. To me, that's when the season begins, and that's what I'm looking forward to. And we still have a lot of time between now and then. So those are my early thoughts. Once we get past cut day, once we get closer, if there's anything that goes on with Joey Porter Jr., with his contract, etc., then we'll certainly unpack that. But as of right now, I guess those are my early thoughts, which I understand I'm babbling here. And listen, I got to draw up content in some way, shape, or form. And today happens to be one of those days where I just came out of nowhere with that type of opening. All right, so now let's get to it. Now, this is something that I guess you could really sink your teeth into. You see those names at the bottom? The most approved. And yes, this could be a bit of a little dicey scenario, especially if you're a Steelers fan thinking, wait, all right, maybe the one guy I can understand, but the other guy, how dare you, Jay Reels? Well, if that's the case, leave a comment in the box below and we'll banter back and forth about it. So the most approved, I'm going to pick one guy from the offense, one for the defense. On the offense, to me, it's simple. It's Troy Fautanu. Fautanu, the number one pick a few years back, Washington, where he was not healthy in his first year. And last year, all right, kind of hit or miss. And even in the opener in the preseason game against the Packers wasn't great either for the time that he played. So now it's a situation where Fautanu, and even going back to the game there on last Friday against the Jets. Well, anyway, Fautanu to me has a lot to prove here. We could talk about Broderick Jones, but I understand he's coming back from a neck injury, and he was putrid in the game against the Jets there last Friday. The rest of the line, I think, is fine. And yes, we could talk about maybe some other players on offense that have a lot to prove. Maybe even DK Metcalf, considering with the big price tag and obviously the Pro Bowl reputation that he has, yes, he needs to have a bigger year than last year. That, certainly understood. But his name's going to be brought up later, so you're going to have to hang tight for that. But I think Fautanu, a guy that was invested as a guy who was going to be a mauler, 6'4", 315, one that was supposed to be a mainstay there on the offensive line. And to me, I think he has a lot to prove here. He's going to have to show his mettle. He's going to have to show why the Steelers chose him first overall in that draft there. What was it, 3 years ago or 2 years ago? I believe, 2024. So yeah, how I see it, Fautanu has a lot to answer and a lot to prove, and even the most to prove when it comes to that offense and offensive line in particular. And to me, on the defense is Nick Herbig. And you're going to say, what? Nick Herbig has been a very good Steeler, a guy that's just fit in, has gotten his sacks, has improved each year. 3 sacks year one, 5.5, and then 7.5. And now he gets the big payday, 4 years, $100 million. And you would only expect that he's going to get better as the years go on. But here's the thing. He got the bag. He's not a starting outside linebacker. And knowing that he's got that money and knowing that he has a lot to, or the most to prove in this case, because now that he's got the bag, he's going to have to now up his sack total in limited time. Now, we understand TJ Watt, well into his 30s. Who knows what's going to happen with him with injuries? And his name's going to get brought up later, too. And Alex Highsmith, who's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. We know when both of those guys, Watt and Highsmith, are in the lineup and healthy and ready to go, they're a very good twosome. And they are one that could certainly wreck a game. Same for Herbig. But the thing with Herbig is that when he's going to get in there. Yes, I know there'll be some packages he's going to get in. And he'll certainly give Watt and maybe Highsmith the blow. But considering he had 7.5 sacks, I believe he only had 5 or 6 starts last year, played in 15 games. But now, if he's not going to get the amount of starts that you would think, if he played 17 games, he would probably get double-digit sacks in his sleep. But to me, considering that the price tag that the front office had given him, and what is that going to be for? For 6.5, 7 sacks? No, we want to get 10 sacks, 10.5. And I get it. It's all due based on his playing time. If he's going to start, if he's going to be able to have enough time to accrue the amount of sacks that we think he could get over the course of 17 games, understood. But I think he's not a guy that's looking to get paid. He already got paid. And now he really is going to have to put in that much more extra work and more productivity in order for him to really earn that paycheck. Because anything less than that, people are going to look at it and say, wait a minute, why'd you pay this guy all this money if he's only going to have this type of output? Or he's not even going to be able to start. And yes, I get it. He's more long-term because who knows what's going to happen with Highsmith and Watt after this year as far as them being on the team. That's right. That's a possibility. But Herbig, I understand this deal is more for the long term, but in the short term, I think he has the most to prove considering the amount of money that he received here just this past offseason, securing that $100 million bag. All right, now I want to pivot here just for a second to talk about the folks at Kalshi. And yes, Kalshi, who is a big partner here of the Steelers latest, of course, on Fan Arch. And as I pull up the script here, if you want to bear with me for 1 second. Yes, here we go. Now, as far as Kalshi goes, whether you're familiar with them or not, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them, for those who are a part of the whole, I don't want to go as far as say like gambling scene, but before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Case in point, if the Steelers win over 8.5, which is the number that's put forth by Vegas every year, this case, 2026, 8.5. Now, if the Steelers currently trading at 115, if you take the over, meaning that a $100 trade will pay out 115. And who wants to take the under? I guess you could take the under if you're not a Steeler fan or you feel like, I don't know if the Steelers are going to get to 8.5. They may be 8 and 9, 7 and 10 at worst. Well, that will pay out 140. So get ready. $100 trade on the over, 115, and $100 trade on the under at 140. That's whether or not they pass 8.5 or certainly do not pass 8.5 wins. So on Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. You will also be able to trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use the code FANARCHFOOTBALL to get $10 when you trade $10. And you see it spelled there on screen. Kalshi, Kalshi, and trade on anything. 18 and over only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. And for more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. Excuse me. All right, now let's pivot to the next item that I want to discuss. And this one is going to be, is it going to be interesting? I think it will be, because now it's going to go to the most improved. And I think these two players that you see at the bottom of the screen, I think are going to be contributing and even bigger factors here upcoming in the 2026 season. I want to start with Darnell Washington. Now, we understand he had some injuries last year, and we all know that it can't be on Pat Freiermuth the whole time. But Washington, as we all know, we call him Mount Washington for his size, his brute strength, etc. And for him, I think he's going to get a lot more catches. I would not be surprised that when you get to in the red, and I understand he may not have the athletic ability similar to DK Metcalf at 6'4", but when you have a guy that's 6'7" and weighs that much, he's a guy that is a mountain of a man that all you got to do is just throw it up, jump up, and that's it. So I think he's going to get a lot of red zone opportunities. I would not be surprised. And also at Washington, too, how I see it is in order for him to get those passes, whether it's in the seam or even in the flat for that matter, and a scenario regarding him being maybe not a focal point, but certainly a guy that could be a big part of the Steeler offense here in this forthcoming season, I like Washington's chances to be more improved, especially in the pass catching ability, that where I believe he got 30 to 35 receptions last year. I could see that being 40, maybe even 50. And why not? He's a big target. He's a big man. Why not use him in that regard? Whether that is in goal line situation or in red zone situations, or obviously if it's a 3rd and 5, and I get it, even if guys are going to double team him or try to get to the line of scrimmage to jam him, the guy is literally a wrecking ball. So to me, I think he could be most improved. Now, I understand all this is with a caveat. You never know what's going to happen with injuries. I understand. But I like Washington to be that one guy that is going to be a big improvement in the offense here for 2026. And then I got to look at Derek Harmon. Rookie last year, now second year. I would think that he's going to make a significant leap. Is he going to go from being a guy that was a rookie to all of a sudden being in the Pro Bowl? That'd be nice. But then again, everybody makes the Pro Bowl. But I would like to see him take a step where he's going to be a little bit more of a game wrecker. Listen, it was the first-round draft pick last year of the Steelers, and why not have him be a guy that's going to take a step, considering he has Cam Hayward to look over to, and even Keanu Benson, for that matter, who has certainly made leaps and bounds in the first couple or 3 years of his Steeler career. So I think Derek Harmon is a guy that could be most improved, that could certainly be a force on this defensive line and maybe get some pressures, some sacks, thrown for losses, some strip sacks, you name it. Fumble recoveries, that's what we want to see, especially with the Steeler defense being as putrid and as bad as it was last year, considering to their teams of yesteryear. So those are the two guys that I'm going to look at to be the most improved. And what do you guys and gals think? Again, comment down below and we'll go back and forth on that. as we talk about the most improved and even the ones that have the most to prove when it comes to the Steelers this year. And then lastly, I know this may be a bit of a trigger warning for some out there when they see the names at the bottom, especially the one to the right, but I'll explain momentarily. DK Metcalf, $30 million. You got 5 years at $150 million. They traded a second-round pick for you. Last year wasn't one of his more finer moments. Now, we understand that when healthy, could he crack the top 10? I think he can. We know about his size. We know about his speed. We know about his ability, etc. But for Metcalf, with the way the season ended last year for him, knowing that he got into that fight with the fan in Detroit, got suspended in the last game of the year against the Ravens, a game that they absolutely had to have, and he missed out on that. And thankfully, the Steelers were able to win thanks to Tyler Loop pushing his last-second field goal wide right. But with the playoff game where he had a drop, did not play well, he had a good start to the game, but certainly did not during the crux of the game and toward the end of the game was a non-factor. I would think he's been sitting on that over the last 8 months. And I would only hope if Metcalf is healthy, 100%, I'm sure he'll be ready to go there come the 13th of September. But he has, to me, the most to lose because whether that means toward the front office, the fan base, and I'm sure if he has a couple of big drops early or certainly not making the big plays that we expect him to do so early on in the season, I wouldn't be surprised if the Steeler faithful turns on him. And listen, although it's Pittsburgh and it's a blue-collar city, but they pretty much have a Northeast mentality like New York, Boston, Philadelphia. If their players aren't performing or if they're not doing well or if the offense is sputtering, they're going to hear it from the Steeler crowd and from their diehard fans. So to me, Metcalf, I'm sure he's aware that last year, certainly I would think for him, didn't sit well with him and certainly didn't sit well with the town as a guy that was supposed to be maybe not the savior, but certainly a guy that was supposed to put up big-time numbers in this offense. And then the flip side of that, I'm sorry, guys. Trent Jordan Watt has to be put on notice here. And I love him. Who doesn't love him if you're a Steeler fan? But I think he has the most to lose. And I talked about this earlier. With a guy like Nick Herbig, who got the bag, and listen, he also went to Wisconsin too, which was the same school that, of course, TJ Watt went to. And Herbig, who, with his comp being a guy like Zach Bond, a guy that has certainly matured and looks like he's going to be on the come up, similar to Bond the last couple of years, winning a Super Bowl, in Philadelphia, and then now being a big part of that defense. Well, Herbig is now aspiring to be kind of like Zach Bond, who also went to Wisconsin. See, I got that all tied in there, nice and tight. But as far as Watt goes, this could be his final year in Pittsburgh. It could be. I'm not saying it's going to be. I'm not trying to predict that, and I hope I'm wrong. But he has a lot to lose because if the production drops off big time, and if he cannot stay healthy, and remember, last year he sat out and he wanted the big-time payday that Myles Garrett got with the Browns before he got shipped to the Rams, of course, this past offseason. And he got the $43 million contract. And right now he's in what, year 2, I believe, or maybe this is the first year of that extension. And I get it. With cap numbers and dead money and all that, it's a situation where it is certainly risky for the Steelers organization to just cut loose. But when you got Herbig waiting there, who's much younger and certainly at a decent price tag. And for Watt, if he's not going to perform to what we've seen early on in this decade, to where he was Defensive Player of the Year, obviously a first-team All-Pro, and I'm not trying to say that he has to record 18, 19, 20 sacks, but can he get 14, 15 sacks this year? Come on, that's not out of the realm of possibility considering who he is. And I would think that he has the most to lose probably on this team overall. Cameron Hayward, he's 36, 37. This is probably going to be his last year. Watt, who's now starting to get in the back nine of his career, starting on the other side of the mountain, this could be one last big year for him, whether it's here in Pittsburgh or he goes elsewhere. But to me, I look at him as having the most to lose, even more so than Metcalf on this team. What do you think about that? I'm sure you probably fell out of your chair, or hopefully you're not listening to this while you're driving because you may have driven off the road. But with all that being said, I want to hear what you have to say and check your comments, and we'll go back and forth on that. And for daily Steeler content, please subscribe to the channel. This is coming from a lifelong Steeler fan. It's 57 years where I've watched just about every game that this team has played going back to the early 90s and have followed them closely. So for your Steeler fix, this is the right place to come to. I can promise you that on a day-in, day-out basis. And until the next video, on the flip.